Hello boys, girls, men, women, plants and everything in between. My name's Danny Burke, welcome back to another Top 10. This is the channel where we take all kinds of weird and wonderful things from all around the world and put them into a nice little Top 10 list so you don't have to. This week I'm going to take you guys back in time to a time when going to the doctors might have actually made you worse, not better, because this is our Top 10 most shocking medical practices from the past. And today, because we're going into the past, I want to ask you guys if you could take back anything from the past and bring it to today, what would it be and why? Let me know in the comments below. One thing I'm sure you won't take from the past are these medical practices, as we jump right into number 10 with rebirthing therapy. This bizarre practice involved a person recreating the act of being born by pushing their way through a birth canal made of pillows. The whole idea was that it was supposed to refresh and reset your senses to brand new and make you experience the miracle of childhood again. In reality though, the patient would just be forced to squeeze through a tight space, and when they weren't allowed to stop, they would often suffocate. This was actually the final nail in the coffin for this practice, and it was banned after a 10-year-old girl died because of it. In 2001, a lot of the things on this list are from way in the past, but people were still dying from this weird pillow suffocation technique 14 years ago. Anyway, we're keeping up the crazy as we head right into number 9 with slicing the tongue for a stutter. This practice's mad idea was that stuttering was caused by a spasm of the vocal cords, and that an incision at the root of the tongue would bring this to an end. It was invented by a Prussian surgeon by the name of J.F. Diefenbach, and he practiced it without using any anesthesia, so having your vocal cords sliced with a knife was about as painful as it actually sounds. To be fair though, it did bring the spasms in the vocal cords to an end, but only because it brought their life to an end. Yeah, hashtag not worth. From death to birth now at number 8, it's injecting rabbits with urine to see if you're pregnant. In 1927, two German gynecologists named Selmar Aschenheim and Bernhard Zondek came up with an experiment that became a reliable pregnancy test at the time. It involved injecting a woman's urine into a female rabbit. They checked the rabbit after a few days to see if its ovaries had responded. If the woman was pregnant, they found the rabbit started producing a specific hormone now heavily associated with pregnancy. As weird as that sounds, this was actually a common practice from the 1930s to the 1950s, but fell out of favour as scientists and society moved on from using live animals as test subjects. Imagine a world without pregnancy tests and instead everyone had a pregnancy rabbit in their home. From detecting pregnancies to stopping them altogether, and number 7 is using crocodile dung as a contraceptive. This practice was as ineffective as it was disgusting, but that didn't stop the ancient Egyptians. Their women would line their vagina with crocodile dung, which would soften as it reached body temperature. Apparently this would form an impenetrable barrier that would stop any sperm from making its way in and creating one of them pesky baby things. Although there might not be much truth to this, there's a small chance it might have worked, as crocodile dung it's slightly alkaline, which can kill sperm altogether. Whatever the reason, it's literally mental, and I'm sure the only reason it even worked was that covering yourself in crocodile dung is the fastest way to stop any kind of lovemaking going on at all. No lovemaking, no babies. If crocodile dung fails to stop your baby being born, then why don't you just give it some class A drugs, because at number 6 it's giving opium to babies. In the first half of the 19th century, the world was hooked on opium. Yes, opium as in the main ingredient in the production of heroin. It's highly addictive, very bad for you, and is a heavy sedative that will send anyone to sleep, so people back then thought it would be the perfect thing to give to babies. Sickney and Paw's pure paregoric syrup contained 46% alcohol as well as opium, and was given to infants as young as just 5 days old. They were given drops to calm themselves down, but I think a closer term would be knock them out. One company even made cherry flavoured opium drops, so you know, if you're knocking your baby out with class A drugs, at least they've got a nice flavour in their mouth. We're halfway through now, which means you're about as half as shocked as you should be, so let's get straight on to number 5 with medical astrology. People in medieval times relied heavily on astrologers studying the stars for all kinds of clues about everything from crop yield to battle plans, but one that stands out was the belief that the stars affected how a doctor should treat you. This wasn't just a recommendation either. By the 1500s, physicians of Europe were legally required to assess a patient's horoscope before they would even touch them. That meant that a doctor would treat you differently if you were a Virgo or a Scorpion. If you and your friend broke your legs, one might get leeches put on and the other one might have to eat leeches. Who knew what was going to happen to you? It was like some kind of weird doctor lottery going on. Pretty scary stuff. Speaking of guessing, try and guess our number 4. Go on, do it. Yeah? Okay, if you guessed dead mouse paste, then you're a bloody genius because that's what it is. The ancient Egyptians had tooth problems from time to time, just like the rest of us. In fact, toothaches were often more prevalent for them because it was almost unavoidable that you would end up eating sand, with so much of it kicking about the place. Unlike us though, they thought it would be a good idea to treat this ailment by crushing up dead mice into a paste and applying it to the source of the pain. We don't really know where the practice came from, but we can be pretty sure why it's not around today. Rubbing dead things on exposed nerves and blood vessels isn't the brightest idea. If you don't believe me, next time you go to the dentist, ask them if you can have some dead mouth paste and just let me know what their face looks like. Yeah. Next up, if you thought farts were just there to make you laugh or gag, then think again, because at number 3 it's keeping farts in a jar to stop the plague. As the Black Death plague swept across Europe in the Middle Ages, people were desperate to try and find a cure, as it killed off millions of Europeans. A lot of their methods seem strange to us, but one of them has to be the weirdest of all: keeping farts in a jar to ward off the plague. Doctors back then were firm believers that the plague was caused by bad vapours, and that only another bad vapour could beat it. Luckily for us humans, we have a nice supply of these bad vapours in the form of fart, which people back then would bottle up. When the plague came to your town, you would open it up and smell. If you can't smell the plague because you're smelling a fart, then the plague can't get you. I can only assume that this whole thing fell out of practice when people started realising that not only were people still dying, but that they were spending their last few days smelling farts out of a jar. Yeah, not really top medicine. So our list so far has been pretty dumb, almost as dumb as drilling a hole in your head. The reason I say almost is because that is our number 2, and it's called trepanning. Perhaps the longest used practice on our list, trepanning was used from ancient times all the way up to the 18th century. In its basic form, it involved drilling a hole into the patient's skull, thereby removing the bone and exposing the brain. This was supposed to relieve pressure on the brain, which was apparently the cause of many different kinds of mental illnesses. In ancient times, the procedure was done with no anaesthetic to relieve the pain, and the resulting hole left part of the brain dangerously exposed to infection. As a general rule, I don't think people should be messing around with skulls unless they're already pretty messed up. I mean, call me crazy, but I feel we evolved these brain protectors for a good reason, and we shouldn't really go messing around with them by drilling holes there, because what's underneath is pretty important to us. Alright, we've reached number 1, and the good news is it's not as dangerous as some of the other ones so far, but it is very shocking. At number 1, it's the smoke enema, or as I call it, blowing smoke up your ass. In the late 1700s, people couldn't get enough of tobacco as a medicine. They used tobacco smoke to cure everything from headaches and respiratory failure to stomach cramps and even the common cold. Someone had the bright idea of putting bellows inside the anus of a drowning victim and blowing smoke up their ass as an actual medical treatment to help save their life. This became such a common medical practice for drowning victims that the equipment for the procedure could be found hung along many major waterways such as the River Thames in London. Back then it either seems like you died with some stranger blowing smoke up your ass, or you woke up to some stranger blowing smoke up your ass. At least if you died, you wouldn't have to deal with the awkwardness. Okay guys, that was your top 10 most shocking medical practices of the past. Let me know if you guys have any better ones, leave them in the comments below. My name is Danny Burt, thanks very much for watching Most Amazing Top 10. There's 2 videos floating over there as well guys if you want to check out some top 10s right now, and be sure to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with everything here at Most Amazing Top 10. Take care and I'll see you very soon.